Brookhaven National Laboratory Instrumentations Group has annual visit days where they show off all the tools and equipment they have been working on for that year. In 1951, William Higginbotham sees these exhibits and thinks to himself, most of these exhibits are dull. We could better capture visitors' interest with an interactive demonstration. This thought to change the mundane exhibits turned into a tennis court and a ball on an oscilloscope with a screen only 5 inches in diameter that could play various curves, come to be known as tennis for two, inspiring the games we all know and love now. While the Vietnam War was dying down and people had phones the size of their heads, the video game industry was continuously rising. In 1972, first seen on the Magnavox Odyssey and then seen in arcades later on, Pong was a hit. Borrowing the simplistic idea of Higginbotham's game, made a game with 2 paddles and a ball, very reminiscent of ping pong, hence the name. Although Atari was later sued for the plagiarism of the game, it made way for the video game industry to flourish and become bigger than it was ever thought of. Fast forwarding 6 years, inspired by Atari's game Breakout, designer Tomohiro Nishikado birthed the first 8-bit game, Space Invaders. Space Invaders brought mainstream eyes to the world of gaming, and because of its action-packed style and upbeat soundtracks, it stuck and added to the imagery of how the industry would look forever. A year prior to this, in 1977, the first big commercial console with the help of titles such as Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Donkey Kong, and Centipede, called the Atari 2600, shot Atari and gaming into mainstream attention.
Sadly, due to the sudden rise of attention, many outlets and shops saw gaming as a fad that would be subject to fade into obscurity. This crash was supported by gaming companies, in hopes of getting on the wave of gaming industry success, made an obscured amount of consoles, which all had different sets of games, causing the buyer to have too many options and killing the fun of playing with friends, as buying different consoles meant you all had different games. Along with companies that would rush out games just to meet the rising popularity of the industry, resulted in very bad games. This caused media outlets and toy stores, which sold consoles, to see gaming as a fad and saw gaming coming to its final leg.
As gaming was on its last limbs, the home computer stepped into the spotlight.
The home computer from Texas Instruments. This is the one.
During this time, the popular TI-99/4A was selling for the same amount as the Atari 400, both for $349. This caused more consumers to attract more to the home computers, as it could play games just like Atari but could do much more along with it. This seemed like a sure way for gaming to end, as computers were just too good for gaming to compete with. Or so we thought.
The video game industry was given hope in 1985 when Nintendo released the Nintendo Entertainment System, also known as the NES, to North American market. Nintendo president Hiroshi Hamachi felt that Atari collapsed because it allowed third-party companies to create bad games and ruin their market because of that. To avoid the same fate as Atari, Nintendo focused on making sure that only high-quality games were made, even if it means producing fewer games than other companies, along with strictly controlling third-party development and putting a seal to make sure only official Nintendo games were released in stores.
The NES spelled out the saving of gaming, but as technology got better, computing got better, opening a path to the Sega Genesis, with better-looking games such as Mortal Kombat 2, Super Street Fighter 2, and a whole bunch of Sonic games. In turn, creating a bigger market for games in both Japan and America. Nintendo right after made a console called the Super NES, also having 16-bit games, and created everyone's favorite racing game, Mario Kart.
Nearing the 2000s, Sony, a relatively known TV company, took their chance with the video game industry, and after a failed joint venture with Nintendo, they made the first PlayStation. The PlayStation was a hit, being the first gaming console with the power to do 3D games, made its sales skyrocket, with games now known as classics such as Gran Turismo, Metal Gear Solid, and Resident Evil. From this point, technology would only get better and people would learn more about designing games, changing how games are forever.
In the modern 2010s, 2020s era of gaming, it is a far cry from what gaming started as. With games looking hyper-realistic and being more interactive with the player, games are continuing to get better. This brings us to the modern big three of gaming, as PC gaming is not a part of this, as combination of all of them, really. While those companies fight that battle, Nintendo goes for the approach of nostalgia, keeping to their expectations of high quality games while revamping and making new versions of beloved characters, while also adding some new ones. The modern state of gaming is an ever-growing field as esports are getting more popular and more companies try to grab your attention. Gaming has come a long way from the two paths on a ball to humongous high-resolution worlds to explore in. Gaming has changed just as the world has changed around it, adapting and overcoming to every obstacle placed in its path. Where gaming goes from now can only be seen as up, and as the expectations for gaming rises, the consumers can hope that the studios continue to reach these expectations.
The home computer from Texas Instruments. This is the one.